If you're lucky in your life, you get to stay connected with childhood friends for the rest of your life. And I have a friend like that. When I was 8 years old, my dad moved us to a new neighborhood. I hated it because I had left all my old buddies and didn't know anybody in the new neighborhood. Well, it wasn't long before I made some friends, and there was this one guy who really kind of took me under his wing, and later in the year and through the years, we just became best buddies, just as close as or closer than brothers. And if you're lucky in life, you get to have a friend like that or a handful of friends like that. And we stay connected to this day. Well, I talked to this one fella maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he was telling me some things going on in his life, and I was telling him about this channel. He's like, oh man, he was like, do you remember when we saw the legend of Boggy Creek? And my mind, I don't remember a lot of these things, but I do remember that. And it was at the Bristol Theater on Summer Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee. That theater's closed down now, but it was like $1 to get in, maybe 50 cents to get in. And before that movie, they ran footage of the Patterson-Gimlin film, and that's how he and I, at least for that summer, and a bunch of the other boys that would go to those movies on Saturdays, got interested in Bigfoot, at least for the summer. I pretty much forgot about it after that, but that summer, oh man, this thing's real. He lives in the woods, and we were just a buzz about Bigfoot. And I had forgotten all that. Well, he told me he wanted to send me a story that was handed down from his grandmother to him. I want to share that with you today, and I hope he hears this. I'll send him a link to it. He's gone through a horrible tragedy in his life over the last year, and I just want to reach out to him and tell him publicly how much I love him and I think about him all the time, and how much I thank him for, in all that he's got on his mind, to stop and write this down for me, because I had never heard it. I had never heard this. And actually, he sent me 2 of them. And I think tomorrow night I'm going to try my best to pull off a live stream on YouTube and maybe read his second story live tomorrow night. All that said, I want to share with you this story because I think it's really cool. All right, here we go. He writes, the other night, after we talked, it made me reminisce about stories I heard in my youth from my grandmother, who was half Cherokee Indian. Her mother, my great-grandmother, was full-blooded Cherokee. We think born in or around 1842 on the Tennessee and North Carolina border in the area known as the Great Smoky Mountains. My great-grandmother married a white French trapper who had stumbled into the area in his trapping adventures. Thus far, you can probably deduct that I'm not as young as probably most of your listeners. Enough rambling. I guess I will get on with the story, which has been passed down from my youth, but now has pretty much been set aside and forgotten. In my great-grandmother's youth, it was told that what we now know and call as Bigfoot was another inhabitant of the wilderness of the Appalachian Mountain area. According to my grandmother, her mother said the native Cherokees call them Sul Kalu Disa Ne Livhi, roughly translated as the sloping giant brother. It was told that these creatures stood almost twice as tall as humans, covered in brownish coarse hair with large shoulders, long bodies, large dark eyes, and a sloping, almost conical head. It is said that these Bigfoot lived in ways associated with the indigenous native Cherokee people of the Appalachian region. The story told down from my great-grandmother was that one evening as the fires were burning down, a soft moaning noise was heard from an area not far from the tribal settlement. It was coming from near a large creek, and several of the elder males took torches and began walking down a trail towards the creek where the moaning noise was coming from. Supposedly, a couple of the women followed behind by several paces. Upon coming to the creek, everyone stopped to listen for the noise again. After a few minutes, the moaning was heard, and as the men walked up on the location, it was then they realized the source of the moaning. It was an almost grown, human-sized creature, but obviously a young juvenile Bigfoot. It had obviously been separated from its mother, which to them was highly unusual, as with any human or animal with young. The Cherokee elders looked on, holding their torches up, lighting the area, as a couple of the women made their way down to the men. It was said that the women instinctively knew something wasn't right about the situation and convinced the men to allow them to bring the young Bigfoot back to their encampment. It was said the young Bigfoot was obviously scared and lost, almost like a human child lost from its mother in the dark. The women stayed up all night with the young Bigfoot, giving it food and drink. The story was that it stayed mostly in a coward posture and moaning almost like the form of crying most of the night, obviously wanting its mother. The fires of the camp seemed to frighten the young creature, but the women of the encampment did their best to comfort him during the night. By morning, the young creature had fallen asleep for a short time and awoke scared, being surrounded by humans. The women again stepped in to comfort the young creature, which seemed to work. I'm guessing the nurturing of a mother transcends all boundaries and species. Later in the day, after the cooking fires had been lit, some young Cherokee children came running into the camp saying that a bigger creature like the young one was following them from the creek. It was then on the outside of the encampment a loud roaring was heard. It was said that the verbalization of this larger creature sent shivers through every animal and human in the near area. The larger creature entered into the outer brush surrounding the camp, making its verbalizations. The young creature began whimpering and stood to its feet and ran into the brush to the larger one. They were seen by all in the camp to embrace similarly to human mother and child. Then, in the background, another even larger creature was seen, not making a sound, but watching over the apparent mother and child and protecting them. A few of the elders got up and walked towards the creatures, but there are no signs of aggression displayed by either the creatures or the elder men of the tribe. There was nothing but silence as both the creatures and humans looked upon each other. The creatures, as an apparent family group, turned and walked back into the dense forest, and then silence covered the mountains. After that time, there were numerous times that contact was made between the tribe's people and these creatures throughout the mountain forests. Each time, all passed as though friends would pass without having to say a word, but each knew that each had the back of the other. This was supposedly how the creatures gained the name Sul Kalu Si Da Ni Live He, the sloping giant brother. As I said, I do not know if this story is true, but it was handed down through my great-grandmother to my grandmother and eventually to me. I did do some research, and the name of these creatures as spoken by the Cherokee Indians in the story does actually translate the same as in the story of my great-grandmother. I give you permission to tell my great-grandmother's story because too many stories of yesteryear get lost in time, and I feel whether true or not, it is part of all of our history, I guess. Thanks and God bless. Signed, Martin. Okay, wasn't that good? I just love these old native people's stories. I don't know what it is. There's something about them. There's a mystical air about these stories, and I love them. For my buddy to take the time to write that down was great. Remember, my offer still stands. I want to remind you, for any of the young people out there who want to write a short story, even if it's fictional, if you want to submit that to me and have it read on the air, you're welcome to email that to me. Check with your parents. That's important to do. Make sure you have their permission. But I'd like to give young writers a chance to have their story told, and I put this out a couple of videos back, and I haven't gotten a response yet from any young people. But I know that a lot of you guys listen to this channel. So if you'd like to try your hand at writing and want to hear your story on YouTube, send it to me, and I will get it up for you. Give you a little good creative exercise in creative writing. And just tell the story. Just dream up a story and tell it, and we'll get it on the air. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all so much for listening.